Now, I've been asked to do many things in my career, some of which I'm not very proud of. Voicing an intro to Battles with Bits of Rubber with Stuart and Todd, well, that ranks right up near the top. I believe it's some kind of a podcast.
So, podcast number 90. We've made it all the way to 90 now.
90 and what a guest.
Yeah.
The Joel Harlow.
And I know he's done a lot of stuff, but I really got hung up on the whole black mask makeup on Johnny.
He's done crazy. I mean, he was nominated for an Academy Award for The Lone Ranger for the makeup he did on Johnny Depp in that. He won for Star Trek, not the Star Trek Beyond, though he was nominated for that also, but he won with Barney Berman and Mindy Hall for the very first new Star Trek that J.J. Abrams directed,
which is an awesome film. It was incredible. I mean, it's lovely to get high caliber guests like that, but it's lovely when they're, so willing to chat to us candidly about things. And I'm just
He's such a nice guy.
He's a lovely guy. He was fantastic. And it was awesome. So thanks, Todd, for arranging that and organizing that. You've been behind the scenes making sure.
My pleasure. Thanks for Joel for being so agreeable, made putting all this together painless.
How's your week been? What have you been up to? Book stuff.
It's all book stuff. I'm broke because I'm turning away work because I have to get the book finished. Fortunately, I'm not broke, but not pulling anything else in, keeping bills paid. But fortunately it's all organizational at this point, mostly organizational. And I just added a big so I have two 32-inch monitors now side by side on my desk. So I can have on one monitor, I can have a chapter up on a Microsoft Word document. I can have all the image captions up on another page side by side. And over on the other monitor, I can have nothing but images. So I can drop and drag from different folders to replace images and add new images, and then just change the captions instead of having to jockey all these different windows on one monitor, which I had been doing and was, lots of profanity.
Yeah, no.
And now I'm actually enjoying it. I've been waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning saying, I want to go downstairs and finish working on this chapter. I'm being very productive. So I'm happy. I'm still going to be right up against my deadline, but I'm enjoying it instead of hating it.
That's good. That's good. I mean, I think it's a lovely feeling when you've got a nice job that you're excited about and you get up early and you pop in the workshop or your desk with a cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've been finishing up a couple of smaller projects that I had been working on for a while, and getting those out the door. So that's nice. So, getting things gradually off the plate so I can be concentrating on just getting the book finished. And that's nice.
Excellent.
What about you?
Well, I started a film on Monday, new film. And then that has been the culture shock of having to get up early to go to a job. They're starting at 7. They're apparently experimenting with 7 o'clock starts. So that's the workshop. So it's getting up like 5:30 to get out the door on time and get there. But I've had quite a few jobs this year that have been in the workshop. I've done a couple elsewhere, but I think it's good to keep things moving. So although I did have work I could do here, I wanted to work somewhere else, partly because when I've been running my own jobs, I have to make so many decisions. It's quite nice to just switch off a bit and just be in the workshop and do what you're told. This needs to be, we need it by tomorrow. And you just
are you working with anybody that you've worked with before?
I have, yeah. I worked with them before on the Marvels last year. It's the same crew, it's David White's crew. But it's lovely because they're a really nice bunch of people, and they've worked together a lot on loads of these Marvel movies. And so there's this kind of what's the word? An economy of how people work. And
sure, yeah. I think we'll talk about that with Joel a little bit. That
shorthand, of how things are, and it's nice to be relatively new within that, because they all know how they're going to do things. They have a certain way of doing things, and they know how long it's going to take. And so fitting in with that is really good, because I think I've worked a lot, especially over the pandemic. I had a couple of jobs, really nice jobs, like the SS Rogue Heroes and all that kind of stuff, and the Power and stuff for Amazon Prime, and things that I've done in my workshop. And you can get really stuck in that kind of zone of being away from everybody and everything, and not having to travel. There's lots of reasons to do that, but I think it's important to be out of your comfort zone a bit every now and then. And
absolutely, yeah, it's
keep
the
fresh.
only way to grow.
Yeah, so I like to keep fresh, and I like the fact that I'm still working on productions rather than talking about something I used to do. It's something I still do, and it's so it's awesome. But I'm also having to finish off a couple of jobs at the same time. So in the evening I get back, I'm working on the laptop on a couple of those things. But what I did want to mention was the prosthetics event, which was last weekend.
Yes,
I haven't spoken to you really about that, and that was a resounding success. It was.
Did
awesome.
Anybody ask about me?
They did. People wondering where you were. They just assumed when they saw the banner that we'd be there together. And it was
that had been my assumption as well.
But no, but it looked, the stand was cool. I did one podcast chat that was there with Duncan Jarman.
Oh, great.
Which was cool. It was about a half-hour chat. So we'll put that up in the next episode or so. And that was really good. But what was weird was, like, when it first started, I'd set up the stand and I'm like, this is always the way. I go to these shows, there's loads of people I haven't seen for a year or more.
Yeah.
And so I'm a bit nervous because I don't know what I'm going to say, who I'm going to see, what, how I'm going to feel. I'm a bit like I'm going to get sort of, in an ideal world, I'd get pestered with questions and pecked to death with things, and that's really lovely. But what if nobody says anything to me? You know what I mean? I don't know. And so the door's open, I'm milling about, we're chatting to everybody, and it's really nice. And the trouble is I kind of know almost everybody at the stands now, because I've been doing it a while. So, I have conversations with everyone. Walk to the next one. There's somebody else I haven't seen for years who's doing really well. Love to chat. Gemma Horner from Krylan, or was working at Krylan, went freelance, was chatting for ages. And then, see the people from Bolton, and then all these colleges that I've been, and then Neil's Materials is there, and
yeah,
it's just lovely, having all these
great
people. And then the show.
I'm sorry I didn't get to go, but it probably was a blessing in disguise, because
you had book stuff, man.
I got a lot of book stuff done that weekend.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
it was very cool.
I think that was the weekend I actually set up the new monitor. So
good. Oh, that's good. And that's going to make a lot.
So I hit the ground running. Yeah. So,
well, also, I just want to mention that we recorded, you and I had a chat through my presentation, because I needed your ears to see how it sounded and what needed tweaking. There were a few things I changed because of that. And so those notes are completed. I had to complete the notes in advance, like a few days before the presentation, because I had to email everything off to Bolton, who were going to be taking care of the audio-visual stuff. So on the education stage, I had a big queue to go in. I didn't realize that was for me. I thought it was for Kazu's talk. But apparently they were turning people away. They maxed out the room. It's 500 capacity, and it filled up.
Wow, that's great. I'm not surprised.
I'm really
not the
really
least bit
touched.
Surprised.
But it's because I promised I had cookies, probably. But I did have cookies, as people saw. But Tiago, who runs Tilt, the makeup shop Tilt over here, has now taken the reins of the prosthetics event show, and he did a great job. It was lovely. I had a really good time. He organized everything lovely. Obviously, I think he was nervous because Neil's been doing it for so long. To be new management, going to compare it to, but honestly, it went swimmingly from my point of view. Everything went swimmingly, and it was really, really great experience. So the next episode, I think what we'll do is we'll probably put that talk up that we had, and I'll put the notes in it, and we'll talk a little bit about what we did in it, because obviously the contents of that talk that I did, the trade show, is a standalone thing, and we can do that as a post. And then the next one after that will be Duncan's chat as well. So we've got 3 in the can ready to go up, and a couple more that are in process. So that's good. But yeah, it was really good fun. So thank you to everyone who came and said hello, and thank you particularly to a bunch of people that were asking me questions about things, because I really like it when you do a talk and you ask questions. And I had some people help me at the end. Karis from college, I can't remember, somewhere in Wales, and a colleague, and they were helping me pack my stuff up, so that when it was done, they took my stuff and they helped me carry it to my car, which
Sweet.
is in one journey. It was
that was nice.
And it was quite a big setup, and I really appreciated that. At the end of the day, when you're exhausted and I hadn't stopped talking all weekend and walking around nonstop, to have someone say, "Do you want a hand packing down?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." And they did. And it was lovely. And in 10 minutes, I was out of there. It was great. So I'm very grateful to them.
I've been getting some emails from some Bolton students about things that they're working on.
Excellent. Yeah, Bolton are really they're doing good things, man. And they're a lot of their students, that attend, they stay in touch with everybody. Who they had a good time at the college and then they leave, and then when there are trade shows, they still want to be associated and talk with the college, which is really nice. Rather than, "Oh, I had a horrible time, never going back there." It isn't like that for them. So that was really nice, and especially Rick, who was he did the Twitch stream with ZBrush. Which might be, I want to check that out because that looks really cool.
Yeah.
Because I think there's something quite nice about watching a sculpt being done in real time by someone that isn't a 25-year-old ZBrush veteran, because most of the tutorials you see people that whiz through these things in no time at all. And so don't explain anything.
And
so I think the idea of watching
anything.
him, start with the sphere and then, just make something in real time is actually, from a sculpting in ZBrush point of view, invaluable actually, because you see how it actually plays out in real time, and that it isn't this flawless, straightforward, easy thing that just, you drop the mouse on the floor and by the time it hits, you've got this rough block out that's perfect. It's like, it doesn't like that at all. So that's cool. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Anyway, that's me waffling on. We should probably just listen to Joel Harlow now because he's far more interesting. So let's do that. Hey, Todd.
Hey, Joel.
Hey, Todd. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you? How's the weather in Atlanta?
Good. Well, I'm in Kentucky right now, so it's I don't know, it's about 56 right now. I think by the time we finish this, it'll be around 53, 52, something like that. But it's all good because I've got a fire going.
Hell yeah!
Oh, nice.
So just consider this a fireside chat.
So yeah, I was just saying to Joel about my crisis of internet. It was to do with the connection to the workshop, not the internet per se. And I was running around like a mad thing, and I just thought I'd bring everything up to the upstairs computer, which is in the house. So there we go. Thank you so much for joining us. This is really cool.
Absolutely.
We've both been pumped about it.
Yeah, me too. I was talking with Rod Maxwell, about it because I listened to the podcast that he did with you guys.
Oh, he's great.
He was like, you're gonna have a great time. Your sense of humor is right in line with theirs. It's like there's no pressure there, but I think we'll have fun.
That's cool, man. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts myself. I really like the medium, as a means of communication and as a source of entertainment. And it always bugs me when I hear podcasts, like really good podcasts with people I really like, but they don't ask them the kind of questions I want to hear. Like I remember hearing, I think Rick Baker, like when his book came out, he had like 4 or 5 in there. He did like Gilbert Gottfried, and he did the Joe Rogan, I think, and Mark Maron, and they were great, but it was just like they weren't asking make-uppy questions. They weren't asking the kind of questions that I would want to hear. They were kind of broad questions. And so I think we kind of pride ourselves on not doing that kind of thing. We're very sort of industry focused and want to get inside the skin of that kind of stuff. So that's in line with how you like to think of things. That would be good.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And in looking at some of your background stuff, I'm fascinated by your animation background.
Yeah.
I taught animation at the Art Institute of Colorado for 16 years.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
I'm an animation junkie.
Yeah, same. When I started off, in this career of creating characters, it seemed like the easiest way to sort of create a character and control the environment that character was in, control, the props that character had, control, the movements of that character, the wardrobe of that character, really everything about a character was animation, because it's sort of certainly it requires a lot of people to do it, but if you are just one person, you can create a world by yourself.
Now, were you doing traditional hand-drawn, or were you doing stop motion, or a combination of all?
I was doing all of it. I was doing hand-drawn animation, cell animation. I was doing stop motion animation with an armature. I was doing claymation. I would just get, sort of found objects and animate those. and I started off doing that in Grand Forks, North Dakota, which is where I was born and I grew up. And then I went to the New York School of Visual Arts. And at the time, there were no makeup effects classes. I knew that really that's what I wanted to do, but there weren't any opportunities. So animation, having, kind of started off with that seemed like the logical choice. And of course, SVA had an animation program. So I jumped into that. And then while I was in New York, we can get into that later, but I got a opportunity to take a class in Times Square with a gentleman, Dean Cartalis. It was the Actors School of Makeup.
Well, SVA is such a great school. I almost went to grad school there.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was great. I mean, it was, coming from Grand Forks, North Dakota and moving into a YMCA, in the city that was basically the size of my closet back home was a little bit of a culture shock. But, I met some great guys there. I met some really talented, not only film people, but one of my best friends there, although we haven't really kept in touch, was Michael Giacchino, composer. I met him my first year at SVA, and then our second year, we rented a place in Hoboken, New Jersey, down near the projects.
Yeah.
And then he's, obviously he's gone on to compose, a lot of my favorite soundtracks, The Incredibles, which I think is
an
pretty amazing soundtrack.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a good film all around.
He's good. Yeah,
that's so cool. And it's interesting that with the animation side of things and a lot of digital animation and stuff, there's still a lot of work that goes into it, and how that all ties together, because that brings in sculpture, and you've got to think about not just the physical object itself, but the arc of a character and the story and all that kind of stuff. Like you say, it's a complete thing, which is, you've got to have a lot inside you, I think, to be able to do that. That's not something I could do.
Yeah, I love your jewelry work here. The rings, the skulls, those are freaking great.
Thank you.
Are you doing those digitally, or are you?
Well, those, I think what you've probably seen, like the ring that, say Johnny wears, like the Pirates of the Caribbean, that was all practically sculpted, out in the jungles of Dominica and, St. Vincent. But now that I'm, sort of jumped into ZBrush with both feet, I'm designing and sculpting jewelry in the computer and printing waxes and sending them right to my foundry.
Wow.
So there's no there's no degradation of detail. It's like I print the wax, there it is, it's completely, it's precise. It's better than I ever could have done with a micro tool or whatever in clay. And then I get it back and all the detail, it's like, it's pretty amazing, just the avenues that, I'll speak specifically about ZBrush, that's sort of opening up to me. It's like, oh, let's try this, let's try that. Like, last couple of movies that I've done, we've utilized, sort of digital a lot, and, fortunately,
are you designing makeups in it?
We've designed some elements of makeups in it, like horns or, skull cap or, fingernails, eyes, that kind of thing. But I mean, there's still something about, getting fingers to clay that,
sure,
I don't think I'll ever get tired of that. I mean, it's the happy accident, It's like start smashing things around and it's like, oh, that's a wrinkle. That makes sense. And then, it can take you in a completely different direction, especially when you have a pile of clay that, let's just say a head cast, you don't know where you want to go with it. You don't know what you're doing. I mean, I've always hated throwing clay away, no matter how sort of full of crap it is and little pieces of junk in it. So I'll just melt it down. I'll be like, okay, this is the junk clay. I'm going to melt it down and make something. And I'll just take that and then I'll make, I'll sculpt the mask or whatever it is. And, it's like getting a sketchbook.
Yeah, I was working on a skin texture series of pictures that are going in the next edition of my book. And I was using clay that I've sculpted with maybe a dozen times already. And I'm doing some pore texture and some wrinkles and pulling cat hairs out of it while it's
Exactly.
going.
But it's got
But
all
that
the
clay
memories.
wants to be something.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
mean. It's got the memories in it.
Yeah.
It's alive.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's still there.
It's like all the opportunities, a pile of like disgusting clay, you know, offers so much potential. You know, like an empty note, like an empty sketchbook. It's like, what is this going to be at the end of the year? You know, what sort of treasures are you going to find in this thing if you could fast forward and then flip through it? So, you know, I just grab a pencil and start going, you know, and see where it takes me.
I think
Very cool.
it's good with the whole digital side of things and using ZBrush. You can do both. I mean, to me, the joy I think is, you know, having scans of heads instead of live casts. They are way more accurate, certainly in terms of, even if they're not as high resolution, they're still, the form is better.
Right.
There's no weight on there. And then you can go ahead and sculpt, you know, on a cast of that or a copy of that, or make duplicates, or you know, in the 4 or 5 days it's going to take to print, you could maybe, you know, thresh out some ideas at least, you know.
And those scans don't take up shelf space.
No, it's very beguiling, isn't it? The whole thing. It's like changing everything. I talk to people like you, they're so enthusiastic about what ZBrush can mean to you. I think partly because you realize where it gives you wind under your wings, because you know, like, oh, I've got to sculpt this thing, and you do things practically for so long that when something comes along and relieves you of that burden, you really feel that rather keenly. I think, you know, it's rewarding, but you need to have, I think, that background in practical to really appreciate it. That's what I certainly feel. Like, I still dig the internet. My kids think that's just baseline, but I'm like, no, this is amazing. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's something about, at least for me, when I'm sculpting practically, say, and it comes too easy, that is sort of akin to sculpting in ZBrush, sculpting digitally. It's like you can move stuff pretty easily. You can, like, okay, let's spread the eyes a little more, let's widen the mouth, whatever it is, and you can do it symmetrically, and and it's all sort of, it almost feels like you didn't earn it. You know what I mean? It's like when I'm sculpting something and it comes too quick, it doesn't, I'll usually end up destroying it because I feel like I didn't suffer for it. I didn't. What did I do
wrong? It can't be this easy.
Yeah, exactly. When it's really, I guess, is what did you do right? It's like, but then there's none of those happy accidents.
Yeah.
That none of that trial and error along the way that leads you down new paths.
Yeah, like jogging with stilts on, I guess. Extra length in your stride, but you're still running. But some of the burden is not down to you, which is cool. Yeah. So how can I talk a little bit about what I find fascinating about what you've done is that you obviously, you work in workshops, you do the job, and we won't go into the details of like sculpting, molding, and casting, because that's what we talk about all the time. But you go from that to like running a shop and being, in control of a lot of people, but you still presumably get hands-on when you can. You don't want to be somebody that just answers the phone and goes to meetings all the time, because I'm sure that would drive you.
Oh yeah, it's horrible.
Any creative people. So do you carve time out for yourself to still do things? Because I think that's really important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Whenever I can, I'll design, if nothing else, I'll design. But yeah, I mean, pretty much every show I've done, whether I'm, sort of the creature effects designer or the department head or whatever it is, I'll still get hands to material. I mean, because that's what I started doing. And it's like I figured if I get to a place where I can't do that anymore and I'm just sort of pushing paper and taking meetings, then the spark at that point is being taken away. And I obviously I rely heavily on my crew, and and I'm very lucky to have some really talented people that have been with me for a long time. But yeah, I mean, I don't, better sculptors than me, better painters, better application people, but I'm not, I don't want to give all that to them. I want to keep some of that for myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it is tough when I can't get my hands in as much as I want to. But I'll try to get at least one or two characters, depending on what the show is. One or two characters and make those sort of my own, stamp them with my own sort of artistic signature.
Mhm. I guess that's a tough thing when you got these big jobs when there's 50 odd
Yeah.
characters or more. You can't do it all, so you have to pass it on. But you have to know your job well enough to be able to spot things and be able to kind of pick people up and keep them on track, so that there's a a group unity. Although, like you say, when you have a big group, I mean, that's what I found working where I'm working at the moment. There are people that have been on from job to job to job, and they just trust and know, and they have a shorthand, and it economizes the movements that you can make because everybody knows what you're likely to get and how quickly things take, and you look at those pinch points. So that must be a nice thing to foster that, and you have your team that you're proud of.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, it's great.
Have you found that working digitally has helped streamline some of the process of the practical work? Say, the amount of character pieces you've had to create for Wakanda.
Yeah,
as an example.
Yeah, absolutely. For an example, we did we had a live cast. We did the telekineal kind of wear these rebreathers throughout the film that are on their shoulders and around their face, and nobody's face is the same as anybody else's. So I figured, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to do small, medium, and large, male, female. The female being a little smaller than the male and a slightly different design. So I sculpted one, we scanned it, and then Rod Maxwell, who was with me on the show, reduced it and enlarged it. And the one that I sculpted was the sort of the 100%, had a 110 and a 90. And then we would create our molds, in the computer, and grow the molds and go from there. And we were doing that not just for those pieces, but also for the river tribe with the lip plates and Stuart, you mentioned the accuracy of a digital scan. That was never more apparent to me than when we redesigned Denai's head stencil. She plays Okoye. She's got this tattoo on her head, and we got a scan of her from the first film. I had a live cast of, but we got a scan of her, and we grew the stencils based on the scan, as opposed to the live cast. We also scanned the live cast. Live cast has, even though head was shaved and she was bald, had little divots in it, and the stencil, it was imperative that it landed perfectly, sucked in everywhere, and you're talking about, dozens of lines per section.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we could have done that, without, digital technology, without a scanner, and without a printer, and, without, ZBrush.
What scanner were you using?
It was the Space Spider, the Artec Spider. Yeah.
He knows it well.
I invested in that. I was like, I'll go with that.
Yeah, Stuart and I have expelled a lot of profanity getting comfortable with that scanner.
Yeah, that interface
it's
is
amazing.
Not good.
No, yeah, that was some of the feedback that we gave Artec that we hope that their engineers will take into account as more and more entertainment people are using that scanner, because it still seems very engineer oriented.
Yeah. But it's using all that technology from the prosthetic point of view, because one of the things I've found is that even people that are very good sculptors with ZBrush, because they're not mold makers, there were certain things they couldn't tell me, even though they know ZBrush very well, because I was coming at it as a mold making tool. I was trying to figure out how to make molds, how to do my flashing, and certain things that are not necessarily sculptural. So I'm kind of abusing it in its way, because I'm trying to do different things with it, and you do have to just play with it. But I do get a real kick out of finding a way of going, oh man, this takes so much longer practically, and then to do, or like you say, I've done stencils for hair pieces, and again, it is that thing where, like you say, it has to sit tight, because if the airbrush gets a little bit underneath, it's blurred, and you haven't got the time to clean it. And it's an incredible amount of leverage. And I worry in this podcast we talk so much about the digital stuff, but it makes such an impact on practical things in a good way that it's kind of unavoidable, I think.
Yeah, I think you have to embrace it, and for the longest time, I started and stopped ZBrush twice. before this third time where I actually said, okay, you know what, I got it. I've seen too many pieces that people are doing. I've seen too much work coming out of it that, impressed the hell out of me. It's like, I felt like every time I saw something, I was just farther and farther and farther behind. And I still am, but I think I know enough about it to, sort of bash some stuff together, and get what I want to.
I think once I realized we only need to use about 5 or 6 tools instead of, I don't know how many there are altogether to do anything. It just made it so much easier. And I've been watching some videos that Maddie Spencer did for Nauman, and that was a real eye opener. Just really big light bulb moments.
Yeah. I mean, there's some of that stuff that it's like, I'll play ostrich and just kind of bury my head in the sand, because if I see it, then I'm like, oh, I'm so far. Because now it's like, I feel good about myself. I know it. I can play, I've got the tablet. I can make, I make jewelry. I can sculpt things in it, and I think it's almost like if I know too much, then it gets to a point where it becomes discouraging.
Yeah, right.
It's like
you'll see what can be done with it, and then you'll feel like you have to do that. But the problem is the program is so expansive that it can do so many things. And you don't have to do all of it. You could just do, it can just help you leverage what you normally do. Certainly at first. That's how it's kind of gotten me hooked, and then I'm like, ooh.
And then at some point you realize, oh, I didn't know I knew how to do that.
That's amazing. And sometimes you do things really quickly. And I think the other thing is working with scan data as well. It's like, I think from a department point of view, to be able to work with other departments with, a uniform language of digital, like you want to be able to throw something to the hair department, but they're not necessarily a department that would use ZBrush. But it's like, that'd be really handy if they could, because then you can sort of talk the same language. It's nice to be able to have someone in for a scan, and you can give that asset to visual effects or whatever, and, bandy things around. And especially if you have those complicated effects where there's a rig, there's a bleeding rig and some air involved. So special effects got to do one bit, we got to do something else, someone's got to run the foam, and we can mock up a core in advance and all these things. So you can kind of make kind of working prototype elements, so at least they fit together. And, that's a lovely thing that I don't think would be possible or practical any other way, really.
Well, it would certainly take a lot longer.
Yeah. No,
I mean, the film that we're on now, we've designed a lot of characters, some of them in ZBrush, some of them practically. We've scanned everything before anything went to molding. We scanned head, hands, and then we printed them out. We printed them out as little maquettes. So, in the war room, where the art department has all their pictures on the walls, and, props are in there, and, set pieces are in there, and the heads of departments and production are having meetings. We have all of the heads of our characters, as opposed to, two-dimensional designs where you're left kind of wondering, what's this look like from the back or whatever. It's like, here it is. It reads like a chess set of different bizarre looking heads. But it's really come in handy, for other departments to see what the character is, kind of where it, where our blend is going to be, what needs to be covered. And, not only other departments, but also, internally, it's like, say you've got a character with, 10 horns. It's like, okay, this is the horn placement. Here it is, 3-dimensionally, just scale it up. Then of course we print out the horns scaled up, and then it just becomes pegging them into a printed out, vacuum form, or a printed out resin, skull cap.
Yeah, it's amazing. People can also interact with things differently when they're physical as well, because it's lovely when you do a makeup and you do your tests and stuff, and that's like the first time you see the finished thing all put together, and it's like, oh, wow, and it's really lovely because you get all the stresses that got to that point of being honored, and you're like, wow, it works, it's a success, or not, as it may be, but if it goes well, you're really pleased. You can kind of expedite that sensation, I guess, and get other people excited, because you know what it's like, in your mind what this thing's going to look like. and you really want people to get excited. Maybe it's a thing like when it turns its head, the head's much wider or longer than you thought it would be, and that's part of the character. And you can't see that. And animation's okay, but to actually have a physical object, and people just absentmindedly play with things and they get attached to them. And I guess people,
we're tactile creatures. It matters when we can hold it in our hands. I mean, that was one of the things. I was a visual effects animator for years, and I still love CGI, but until fairly recently, you couldn't hold it in your hands. And being a tactile person, that's why I quit visual effects to start doing practical effects, because you could touch it, you could get clay under your fingers, and you could look at it upside down and from the top and all angles. And now you got the best of both worlds. You can still do the CGI, and the next morning be able to turn that thing around in your hand and see it from all those angles. And it's just so exciting to be able to do that.
I'll print out everything I do, because I've, as a kid, I always loved seeing, behind the scenes of, so-and-so's workshop or this guy's workshop or whatever. And they, there are always shelves full of maquettes, and it's like, I should have kept that. I could have put it on a shelf, and now it's like, you need more shelves, because you can keep printing these things out, at any size you want. And you reposition them, print them out again, whatever it is, it's a toy factory.
Literally, it's what helped put Leica on the map with their stop motion, being able to print out all of those facial expressions. Every single phoneme is right there. I mean, you can turn the sound off and actually read the lips of their characters.
Wow.
It's astonishing.
But that's applied that technology, because there's a lot of people I think get distracted by it and they sort of fall in love with the process of doing it, but not really with any great mind. It's kind of like picking up a guitar when they're little kids and they just like making the noise with it. It's like you actually have to go through the work of learning notes and chords and putting it together into a pleasant song. And it's like that with, I think, with a lot of anything really, digital stuff or practical. You still got to serve your adolescence in it and kind of come out the other side. Makes me want to sculpt.
It's so worth it. It's so worth it. Learning it is so worth it.
It totally is.
And I like I said, I resisted it for a while. And I still have friends who resist it, but I've embraced it, and it's been fantastic because it lends itself to so much. I've been doing like these short films, and it's like I'm making sets in in
that's what I wanted
ZBrush
to
and
talk to you
printing
about.
out pieces. It's like, oh, this is great. There's so many avenues for this.
So do you like wearing the director hat?
Oh, I love it. I think it goes back to going back to anime. It's like you're in control of everything. You're in control of and then sort of my philosophy when I would create characters for myself. It's like I wanted to design the not only the makeup but the wardrobe, the props, the environment, and really create a character, not just a cool makeup and a leather jacket. You know what I mean? But doing the short films is like a step farther, because now they, I'm bringing them to life, and certainly it's collaborative, and I'm fortunate because a lot of the people that I'm working with on these things, share the same sort of aesthetic vision. And we just have a lot of fun doing it. It's very stressful, but,
I know Rick's really gotten into stop motion. Since his retirement.
He's doing amazing stuff. Yeah.
So where can we see Old Time Radio?
Well, the oldtimeradiorror.net has the first film on it. And then I'll be putting the second one, which is Old Time Radio Your Move.
That's the latest one.
That's the latest one. I just wanted it to go through a little bit of the festival circuit first. And, it premiered at Screamfest, and now it's in a couple other festivals, but I'll be throwing it up on that website.
Right.
I mean, ideally, it's like I'd like to do that. I mean, that's sort of feeding me right now is those short films. but I don't want to wait for somebody to say, hey, here, go ahead and do it. So screw it. I'm just going to do it myself, and, I know enough people that, want to, play in the sandbox and, reach out to like Rick and have him come and do a cameo because I thought that would be fun. And, have miniatures and, sort of old school movie tricks.
Oh, it's getting all of those elements into
it.
And Rod is such a great character person. A lot of people don't realize he did 27 makeups on himself for a short that he wanted to do, and then you got Marty Matulis. Marty and I go way back, and then pairing him with Rod just felt perfect. It's sort of the Statler and Waldorf without the dialogue. It's those two curmudgeon-y old dudes just having at each other sort of subversively. Love it. I can't wait to see it. The trailer looks fantastic and the stills are amazing. And thank you for letting me put some of those in the book. I think
absolutely.
Those are going to be a hoot for people to see.
I'm planning another one. I'm going to introduce another character, sort of a love interest that they're both going to sort of rival for the affections of.
Could you indulge me with a little talk about the black mass makeup on Johnny Depp? Because I'm really excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of my favorite makeups of all time. I love it. I think it's
amazing. Thank you.
And it's when I teach classes, I go through, one of the things I like to do is to sort of explain like all the makeups. We go through the typical things that people think of, and it's shocking actually how many people haven't seen like Legend and stuff. I'm like, would you look at the Tim Curry thing, please?
Kids these days.
And then I like to bring it down to like the stuff that you could, observe, and the materials and techniques now are so good that you can hide in plain sight, and I love the idea of doing that kind of stuff. Now obviously with that makeup, with Whitey's kind of, we know it's Johnny Depp, so we can see there's a change, but you could do that makeup on somebody else, and if you didn't know who they were, well, in all fairness, you didn't really recognize Johnny at all in that. It looked I don't think I mean, ideally if you didn't know that it was him, you just think it was somebody that looked like James Bulger, but because it was a Johnny Depp vehicle, obviously his name's up front. Yep.
I think those are the toughest makeups to do, because monsters, they don't really exist, so you can have all of this leeway and freedom to take it in places. But if you're recreating somebody who existed in life, like Whitey Bulger, and putting it on somebody else, creating a likeness, age makeup, if it's not done well, it's going to stand out like a sore thumb.
Well, that's it. Because if it doesn't look exactly like the person, which it's unlikely to, because it's kind of impossible to do that unless you're very fortunate with the casting, but it then becomes a distraction of its own. Do you know what I mean? You're sort of noticing it.
It takes you out of the picture.
Yeah. Whereas this was low. I just want to talk. It was such a complete transformation. I have to put some pictures in the notes so that if people haven't seen it, and they should. I mean, he's a vicious guy.
Yeah.
But he's just, the whole thing's just a complete transfer. Can you talk a little bit about the design of that and how you would say, so you've got someone that we know what the guy looks like, we know what Johnny Depp looks like, and how close are we going to get? And it's that dialogue of how far can we go without it looking like a parody of it. But
I went there. I went to the parody in the test. Really, at the beginning, they didn't want, meaning, the producers, the director, didn't want Johnny to wear any prosthetics. They wanted sort of, Donnie Brasco version of Whitey Bulger. But Johnny, he's a huge fan of practical makeup and transformation and all the movie tricks that are afforded him, becoming a character through props, makeup, hair, wardrobe. He embraces all of that. So he wanted a transformation, a prosthetic transformation. And then the initial one, I mean, really at that time, before Whitey was captured, and sort of then you know, his image would come up and documentaries would start coming out. Not a lot of people knew who Whitey Bulger was or what he looked like, you know, unless you knew sort of American, you know, gangster crime, you know, and all that.
Or grew up in Boston.
Or grew up in Boston, yeah, in Southie. But he at first we had done a full transformation. You know, I pulled all the research I could, and we did, you know, lower lip and chin, you know, cheeks, you know, upper lip, nose, forehead, the whole bit. And from some angles, it looked pretty close to what I was seeing in the photographs. But the compromise, you know, like I said, production didn't want that. They, you know, they're paying for Johnny Depp. They want to be able to see Johnny Depp, I guess, as opposed to just having Johnny Depp act. So the compromise was nose and a forehead piece. And really it was the best way to go because it preserved all of this, and you could, no matter how, how thin the prosthetic is, you're still covering a little bit of expression. Mm-hmm. But he agreed. They agreed. And so that's what we ended up doing. Problem was they agreed 3 days before we were about to film. So and I had done several versions. Yeah, it was horrible. I had done several versions of this forehead piece. It started kind of under the cheekbones, and wrapped up around into the eye sockets, came down into the nose. Then there was the nose piece. And then from the sides, it went up and a little past 3/4 of the head, kind of stopped up here. That was cast, molded collapsible core, cast in silicone. It had to be seamed from the inside. If I'm remembering correctly, the core was split here inside. So it came like right down, almost through the center of the eye, through the center of that cheekbone piece. So internally it had to be seamed. And that's a horrible place to have it seamed. On the outside, it'd be even worse. Inside, still pretty bad. Because you've got, you're getting thin there, and you've got,
it's your edges.
Exactly. But there was no other way to do it. There's no other way to split it. And starting, going into production 3 days before we shot meant that we could not have any reject pieces. Whatever came out of the mold, we had to use it. We had to fix it, somehow get it to our hair puncher, who spent 24 hours punching each one of these things. So she was on sort of an opposite schedule as us. We'd get the thing done, seam it, get it to her. She'd punch hair in it, came back to me the next morning, whatever it was, 6 a.m., glue it on and, trash it. And the next day, do it all over again. And we were never, there was one day when he had like a day off or he was sick or something, and we got one piece ahead, and that was it. It's like, but then we burned it because they picked up that day on a Saturday, so we burned that piece. So we were still, just barely keeping our head above water. And there's, I watched a movie and it's like, oh, there's the a particularly bad piece that day, and and there's stuff like that I clock.
Fortunately,
I think
you're the only
anybody
one
does.
that would notice that.
No, let's hope. Let's hope. But it was tough. That was a tough one. But on the flip side, because you really don't have time to come up for air, so you don't know how it's playing. Until one day I saw a newspaper that said, Whitey Bulger is, back in South Boston. And there was a picture, somebody had snapped a picture of Johnny walking, from base camp to set, across the parking lot. And it was, it looked like Whitey Bulger. It was like, holy shit. It's like, I think we might be pulling it off, But then there was a lot of people that came around that had known James Bulger and said, they thought they were talking to a ghost, and I mean, those are always like, compliments or comments that I take as compliments, that if here's somebody that knew him, if they're fooled up close, then, it can't be as compromised as I think it is.
Oh, it was glorious, and I like to see that. And then when you do those kinds of things and the stuff in Star Trek, it's just a world apart, but it's that same ethos. You got the mechanics of how a piece is made, the edges got to be right, the colors got to be right, it's got to be the right softness. You're worrying about how the hair is going to work, where the seams, all that kind of stuff. But then there's also the thing of like, you've got to populate a scene, and now you've got all these different radically things, and each one of those presumably is still abiding by the same thing. But then if it's a massive thing like a shell in the head, or you've got weight issues, so there's we talk a bit
how
about
much creative freedom did you have on the design for those characters?
Oh, a lot. Yeah, a lot. Just because there were so many of them, certainly in the beginning, and with like the hero characters like Jayla and Krull and Manus and Kalara, those characters were scrutinized and, and designed and redesigned more than the others. But at a certain point, it's like, there are 56 of them, and they're just like, yep, okay, yep. It's like, yep, here's, I stopped showing designs after a while. It's just make stuff and bring it to set, and it's like, oh great, let's put it in front of camera. That's what I love it when it gets to that point.
That's
do you have a favorite character from that
from Star Trek Beyond? It would have to be Natalia, which is the one with the shell. And it that was applied on my stepdaughter, Ashley Edner Tancherone, because she just got married. But we had designed that way back towards the beginning in our shop in Burbank before we moved everything up to Vancouver. And then we shot at Vancouver. We're making this thing. I think we tested it in Vancouver on Ashley, and it looked great. It was like, oh, I can't wait for the scene that they're going to put this in, because I would show them. I would test everything. I tested everything myself. Take, pictures, show it to production, show it to Justin, and be like, oh, okay, we'll put that in this scene, put that in that scene. And so far, now we've moved to Dubai, and we've got, less than a month left. And she still hasn't been in a scene. And I went to Justin. I was like, what scene is she going to be in? Now we're down to like 2 days to go. So we've got Kirk's birthday party and Yorktown Base. Yorktown Base is this huge scene, bunch of aliens wandering around, just a bunch of weird heads in the background. And then Kirk's birthday party is a little more contained, more focused, and there's only a few aliens in there. And I'm like, well, Kirk's birthday party shot the next day. It's 10 o'clock at night. And that makeup took us 8.5 hours to get, 9 hours to get her ready, because it was all prosthetic arms, prosthetic back, prosthetic chest. Excuse me. So it was like, well, I could go get a good night's sleep and, kick this to Yorktown, or go home, shower, come right back and jump into this application, for this sequence, that where at least will be somewhat featured. It's like, I don't want to be sitting in the theater in a year thinking, I should have stayed up all night. It's like that would have been horrible after building, this house for months. It's like, I'm not going to paint it now. I'm not going to put the finishing coat of paint on the house, so yeah, so we stayed up and did it, and
paid off.
Got her. Yeah, it paid off. I would love to have seen her in more, in more of that sequence or in another sequence, but at least I can't remember, some magazine grabbed that shot as sort of our like introduction of new aliens for this new Star Trek.
Yeah.
Which was nice.
Yeah. And then you'd be like, they were like, oh, we should use that more. You're like, yes, you should.
Yeah.
That's awful when that happens. I've done, you know, you get, especially when there's a lot of background stuff, and it's like you do all these makeups in anticipation because, you know, the call sheet just like this roll call of early starts, and then, you know, they just sit in their green room all day. You know.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
So what kind
exactly.
of filler was inside the inside the dome? Was it foam latex?
It was there was a fiberglass skull cap and a foam, you know, just foam padding, and then that was that lightweight casting plastic. Gil Liberto casted that for me, and it's surprisingly really light. It's like, you know, Hellboy's, you know, giant horns we made out of that, you know, all the horns on Evil, the TV show, we're making out of that. This show I'm doing now, we've made some stuff out of that, but that material, it's like you could bounce that stuff off the wall, you know, and nothing will happen to it. It might chip the paint, but it won't.
Something
shatter
an actor can't break.
Yeah, exactly. Just my soul.
See, these are the things we like to talk about because it's amazing how much of these things you don't see them on the screen. Like you don't know, well, you see the makeups, but you don't necessarily know the pain and the difficulty that went into it and overcoming it.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I think people need to appreciate, that, you know, it's doing the job. Obviously you've got to be able to do the job, but you have to do it within the, you know, the confines of the industry, which
after the budget's already been spent on visual effects.
Yeah.
And it's strange to me how often people either can't imagine or they don't see what is required, and then when they see it, they're often like, oh, I get it now. Like, yeah, I just thought it came out of a bag, you stick it on. It's like, no.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, it never is that more prominent than when you're working like on a TV schedule, you know, and trying to keep the bar raised. It's like, you know, I won't take on anything where I feel like I have to compromise too much sort of my expectation of myself, and you know, the crew compromise their expectations of what we're delivering as a collective studio. But you know, I do this TV show Evil, and I got to say, it's been one of the best experiences of my career, because we're allowed to create very high-end characters, you know, stuff that they, you know, nowadays they really don't let you do in movies anymore, you know, like animatronic makeup crossover characters, and, you know, CG, you know, combo wings and glowing eyes, and, you know, old-time practical effects bladders and stuff, you know, all of these things we're putting into characters on this show. And I kind of have free reign over what I want them to look like. So much so that I'll present, you know, I'll be sitting around thinking like, you know what, I want to do like sort of a Baphomet kind of old-fashioned goat devil, you know, and I'll present it to, you know, Robert and Michelle King. And this happened on the first season. I was like, how about we do this for the season finale? They're like, that's great. And they did it for the season finale. It's like, oh, cool. You know, and then I get to make it, you know, it's like I get to make things that I always wanted to make. You know, I get to go back into my sketchbooks from high school and say, oh, you know, and I liked this when I was, you know, sketching it back, you know, at age 18, had no idea how to make it. Now I've got the bag of tricks to be able to pull that off. How about something, you know, redesign it a little bit, submit it. It's like, yeah, let's do that. You know, so it's like, you know, it's, you know, sort of letting the child artist, you know, spread his wings from,
that's awesome,
from way back. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Where are you doing Evil in Atlanta, or are you
no, that's
flying back and forth? Okay.
Yeah, but it's being built at my studio in Van Nuys. So while I'm in Atlanta finishing Red One, which is the film I'm on now, I'll be sending back information to the guys and, you know, getting video updates and all that. And then come end of January, I'll rotate back there. And then they've still got, you know, 3-4 months to go. So I'll jump on that. But yeah, I love that. I love going up to Brooklyn and shooting it. It's a great crew, and, you know, really fun characters. Yeah. So much different than when I lived there. at the YMCA.
I want to talk a bit about, if you don't mind, just a little bit about the step up from when you go from like being someone that has to run a shop for the first time and take control of things. How did you find that? Was that a gradual transition for you, or was that just suddenly an opportunity comes along and you're like, well, I don't think anyone's prepared for it. And all the people I've seen that have done that, they weren't prepared for it, but they just did it anyway. And they found that they were good at it. I guess you just have to take that step and from a trot to a gallop, there isn't an in between.
Yeah. I think for me, that sort of transition, I mean, I had started doing my own shows, but they were hard to get, so I'd done a couple episodes of Buffy, way back, and then I got into the makeup union. So I started doing more application stuff, applying other people's makeups, whatever it was. Then I started working with Johnny. Let me think about this. Then I trying to think what really was the first kind of big film I did on my own. Might have been Battle Los Angeles. And a buddy of mine, Jeffrey Chernoff, asked me to come do that show. And because he knew that I had done, no, it was Star Trek. It was Star Trek, the first Star Trek. That's what it was. Because he asked me to come do Battle Los Angeles after Star Trek. So they knew, we started Star Trek, J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, and the Romulans had not been designed yet. And the ears for the Vulcans had some issues. We were trying to apply them. Some of them would turn out, some of them wouldn't. And so production came to me and they asked me if I would take over the Vulcans and handle the Romulans, because I had done, I had created prosthetics and makeups on the Pirates of the Caribbean, the first 3 Pirates of the Caribbean, most specifically the Bootstrap Bill character on part 2 and 3. And they asked me if I could do that, sort of run a shop on set, staffed with people that I would hire, but they would pay, so I would basically supervise them. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'll bring in my friends that, do this stuff with me anyway. And we built everything on the Paramount lot, and this was during the writers' strike. So, we were fortunate to have work, and I was able to get a couple of my friends into the union, because they had to be in order to work on the lot out of the trailers, because everything we were making was done out of trailer. Did that. Jeffrey then got Battle Los Angeles, asked me if I would come do it. And, the build was bigger. Now it was aliens and, prosthetics on some of the soldiers and all that, an autopsy sequence. But I mean, it's so, getting back to your question, it was kind of a gradual transition. It wasn't really, I didn't really think, oh, you know what, I want to open a shop. It was always, I want to make interesting characters. I don't care if I'm, just doing one thing for one person or, doing, 20, 30, 56, whatever it is.
That's interesting. Like you say, from your animation point of view, you wanted to be, to oversee the whole thing anyway. So,
yeah. So, I mean, that was the transition. And then, that led to this, led to Pirates 4. And then, and now I was department heading and running the shop on location. So I didn't open up a physical studio until right after Logan. After I did Logan, I opened up a place, because when we'd come back from location, we just put everything in the storage unit. But then we'd get like little things, somebody needed a nose or some wounds or whatever. There was nowhere to do it. So I was like, all right, well, let me get a small space and I don't want to be a studio. I don't want to be a makeup effects studio with, all the stuff. I just want a spot to work. Ultimately it turned into, we need more space and we're making cool stuff and I don't want to put those in storage. I want to see them. So, now I need a display area and all that kind of business. So it just kind of, grew sort of organically out of necessity, I think.
Do you find it spreads yourself a little thin sometimes?
Yeah. Oh yeah. All the time. because I can't say no. Something will come along and I'll be like, oh yeah, I want a piece of that.
Yeah, I think it's something that most artists have trouble saying no.
Yeah. It's
That's
like,
true.
especially, if it's something that from childhood, like, I did, some characters for the new Haunted Mansion movie, and I was like, oh, I'm a huge Haunted Mansion fan. It's like, I've got it.
Sweet.
I was busy, but, I'm not going to say no.
No, exactly.
I'll find a
and
way
then
to
it's
clone
just
myself.
freaking juggling. That's the hardest part of this, is just the juggling,
Yeah.
and finding people that you can really trust.
Yeah.
There's people you can trust, and then there's people you can really trust to handle things the way you would handle them, to keep the bar set where you put it, and, to work in collaboration with you without feeling like, hey, I'm doing all the work. What do I need him for? That I think is the hardest part.
Do you have a core group that you have with you on everything?
Yeah. I've got a core group of maybe, it's small, 4 or 5 people, depending on what the project requires. Gil Liberto is, he's my other half. I trust him, with my life. And he's been with me on everything. And then I've got sculptors and I'm meeting more people, embrace in that group, like Richie Alonso. I've been working with Richie forever, and I love him, like a brother.
Richie's kind of an unsung hero.
He really is.
He's been on everything, and he's not a household name.
No, and he should be, because he's incredibly talented, not just as an application artist, but as a sculptor. It's like there's nothing that he can't do. Like, when I can get to work with him, which is a lot, it's always special. It's a great time. Yeah. So those guys are really close to me. Those are the guys I know I can tell things to, and they'll have my back.
Yeah, that's very important. That's very
really important. Yeah.
It's interesting to me that you say that, like, about Richie Alonso being an unsung hero. There are people like that are just, entire jobs can depend on them and their competence, and they're not necessarily on social media shouting about it. So
yeah,
a lot of people who are up and coming, I meet in makeup schools who are training and stuff, they're very focused on, their social media presence, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it shouldn't be instead of competence. And I really, again, on this show, we really like to champion, being good at something and being valuable to somebody else, so you can solve somebody's problems, is really, really good way of making a living.
Yeah. Like he, I was able to get him, or he got himself on the ticket for Star Trek Beyond, on the Academy ticket. So, we went to the Oscars together, and that for me was, that's all I need. That was the win, is to be able to have Richie there, being recognized for his work in general, but specifically on the film. And I remember Bill Corso, when he was sort of introducing us at the symposium, he called out Richie and said, here's a guy that's been around forever, and just like you said, he's been a part of a lot of the things that you've seen, and and not a lot of people know who he is, outside of sort of the older industry.
Not even widely known within the business.
Yeah, exactly. But he absolutely should, and he's helping me on this one. He and I are doing a makeup together on this movie.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because that runs so counter to how people sort of put stuff out, and the irony being, when you're working a lot of shows now, because of any of the age, you don't get to show people pretty much what you do anyway, certainly not at the time of making it.
So if Richie's involved, you can bet that it's going to be pretty spectacular.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you bring that up about touching on the social media thing. I just I've got a friend now who just started an Instagram account for me. I had one back in the day and I never went on it. The most I would do is look for artists, and I found some designers from it. But I had him open up a account for the studio for morphology, and that's just because now there's no prosthetics magazine, there's no makeup artist magazine. It's like, where can people see the work? It's it's social media. That's the museum now. And when you're making things and, you want to share it, normally I'd go to Neil or I'd go to Michael and I'd be like, hey, put this in, do a little article, I'll write it, whatever, put it out in the magazine. It doesn't exist now,
Yeah.
which is
I
a
love
real
that Bill
shame.
Forsh is. I love that Bill Forsh is always posting historical
Yeah.
stuff. Stories about Jack
Yeah.
Pierce and
Yep.
Forey Ackerman, and these. I don't know where he finds some of these images, but they're incredible.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
And
thank
that's
goodness
great.
that there are people doing that.
Yeah, because otherwise you wouldn't have that. You wouldn't have, unless somebody put a book out. But then how would you know about the book?
Yeah,
Social media.
I think it's tough because like the magazine couldn't keep going because I think the sheer cost of production really. But Todd and I really we loved writing for it.
It's a gorgeous
Yeah,
magazine,
great.
high quality,
Yeah.
everything in it.
I loved it.
And the show notes that we often do for the podcast can be very extensive. And we did like the Shaun of the Dead one. And it was like sort of 30-page effects breakdown because the friends I worked with that were on it were like, let's go through the film step by step and go, how do we do that effect? We got any pictures of those molds? Does all of this happen before? And it was, we'll do that kind of stuff, but it takes a while to put it together. But it's like, because I still get a kick out of that. And I know not everyone will, like, someone puts a broken can in the face or something, that gets millions of likes, and then you do like a
scissors in the eye,
and 3 people
50,000 likes.
Yeah, so there's a diminishing return on how deep you go with things, but I find that I will get emails and Todd will get emails or messages, people going, "Oh, thank you for explaining how you attach a pair of scissors to the eye or whatever," because no one's telling them this, so they just that's where they can, and it's really that's where the work is, that's the molding and the casting and making a lightweight and getting a scan and making a plate and making sure that it can break off.
Something that won't actually go all the way through your head if you happen to fall down.
Yeah, all that stuff. You're right.
It's the problem solving. It's
but it's highlighting that and letting other people know that this is the job. This is what this is where the work is, figuring that out and how to do it efficiently.
Well, I think a lot of people forget that we're playing make believe.
Yeah.
It looks real, but it's make believe.
Yeah. And it's fun when you get a kick out of it, and you even if you do this for a living, you still completely buy into something, when something happens on screen.
Well, I tell my students, it's just like, we get to play make believe for a living. And how cool is that? We get to, it's the fountain of youth.
Yeah.
It really is.
Never have to grow up because we're playing make believe and getting paid for it.
Yeah. And you shouldn't grow up. The second you grow up, it's like maybe you're in the wrong business. You still have to have that childlike wonder eye. You have to see things not for what they are, but for, how you can manipulate them and, how you can twist them and turn them into something that you haven't seen before.
Yeah, it is fun as well. I mean, I do enjoy. I don't know if you ever get to teach, or do you ever do like lecturing guest spots or something at cinema makeup school or something like that?
Yeah, I did. I did a couple of classes there, and then I did I would do makeup demos. Where I would talk along with what I was doing.
Yeah,
I remember one specific instance. It was an LA IMATS, and you were doing a demo for might have been at the Friends stand, and it was at a time after Michael had the show was becoming more of a beauty makeup show than a makeup effects show, and it was I think a Saturday Sunday where there was a line of 150 people, where the free shit at, so they're lining up to get a free brush or a makeup bag, standing within arm's length of you doing a gorgeous multi-piece silicone makeup, and these people had no idea who you are, what the fuck you were doing, and couldn't have cared less. And I'm walking by looking at this and going, the world has changed for the worse.
Well, it's that thing of like the people that you want to sort of talk to and influence and inspire and work with, all those kinds of things. They're still there. It's just an awful lot of people, like you say, are looking for the free stuff. When you start seeing the teeth blending bars and the champagne and strawberry things popping up, you're like, oh, okay. I went to the first IMAX and I remember, the full-size Sherma Clump figure, and and Dick Smith was walking around, and it was just like, it was just
Yeah.
amazing. And I think the internet's kind of like watered down the thrill of that in a way. Do you know what I mean? So you're getting a lot of people just kind of like cruising along for the
Yeah.
whatever, and it's not the same. But when you do have a good show, we had the prosthetics event last weekend actually, and that was a really good.
Which you did some amazing notes for that too.
I did some notes for that. I did like 20 pages of notes, but I put a QR code up so I had to finish the notes first, so that when I did the presentation, everyone could scan it and download it, because I thought you're not going to have time to write all this down. But
I hope people did.
I hope they did. I enjoyed it, but it was lovely because it had that kind of, even though there was a show last year, but it's that kind of post-COVID kind of like everyone really enjoyed the fact that everyone was there, and there was a huge amount of that what's the word, everyone's just inspiring each other and talking and getting to the bottom of things and figuring stuff out.
No, it was great. It was my first and only one to date, and it was so much fun.
Yeah, and it's lovely when people are thrashing out things, because you're the face-to-face with people who've done this stuff. And when you're explaining, Joel, about the amount of time you had to put into these hours, and I really want people to understand the lengths that you will go to get stuff done, and that's not evident on the finished screen, or they cut the whole character. I mean, it's upsetting when as long as they pay you, but even so, it's quite nice.
Well, I mean, it's great to make a living doing this, but I would do it even if I wasn't, making a living at it. And so to create a character, the end result of that is to see it on screen, and it's really it doesn't live up to its potential until the actor brings it to life, and you see it in its world doing its thing. But I mean, so much goes into it, and you can't think it's like, oh, we're only going to see this for 10 seconds. Who cares? Oh, it's like that 10 seconds is not 10 seconds. That 10 seconds is freeze frame, rewind, that 10 seconds is an eternity. So everything you do, try to keep it at the level of quality that you would create something that would be the main character throughout an entire film. 10 seconds, 2 hours, it doesn't make any difference. It's all got to live up to that level. Otherwise, you haven't done your job correctly.
Absolutely. And I think not feeling that is a red flag to make you reevaluate your career choices and your career goals. I tell students, when you as artists, our work, we talk about this frequently in the podcast. It's kind of my soapbox issues. As artists, we're never satisfied with our work. It's never good enough. Doesn't mean you can't look at your work and say, hey, that's pretty good, but you should always look at your work and know it could be better if you had more time, better materials, any number of things. There's always room for improvement. And the day comes that you look at your stuff and go, that's it, man. That's perfect. There's nothing I can do to make that better.
Then you're done. At that point, you're done.
That's when you need to start making the circuit, because
and the second that
your head's in the wrong place.
Yeah. And if you don't enjoy that, if you don't enjoy that process of, what are you kidding? Making monsters? If you don't enjoy that, then
fun.
Oh, fuck, go deliver newspapers or some shit. And do they have newspapers anymore? I don't even know.
When you're thinking about characters and stuff, because this is one of the things I've really liked when I've done classes and things at makeup schools, particularly, where they're gonna like the whole project will basically involve them making a piece, and so it's almost like they rush that very quickly, and it's really nice to sit with that magical stage before anything's really decided, where you can kind of go, okay, now what are you going to make and why? Because I would imagine when you're designing characters, you have something in your mind that you want to sort of explain or display in some way. Can we talk a bit about like just that psychology of like coming up with characters? Because like, for example, it happens all the time that they'll say like, oh, okay, well, let's fix on like a boxer after a fight, and there'll always be a split lip, a broken nose, and a cauliflower ear, and a black eye, like every time. And it's just like, let's think about this. How else might this go? And actually putting a story in it, and it's that lovely storytelling aspect of makeup. It's not running straight to the makeup box and the brushes. It's actually what are we going to show first? What are we trying to say first? And that.
Yeah, it's with alien species. Where did this species develop? What was the atmosphere and like on their home world? How would they evolve? How did they become what they are.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, everything, whether it's an alien or, obviously something terrestrial, if you can bring it back, at least for me, if you can bring it back to nature and give it some sort of earmark of something that exists in the natural world, then that to me helps it feel more believable. It can be a fantasy character, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But if you can kind of ground it a little bit, as fantastic as you want to make it, but ground an aspect of it in reality, then I think it helps the audience make the jump to that suspension of disbelief. Yeah, I mean, when you're sitting in front of a blank screen or a blank sketchbook or whatever it is, and you have to create X, the demon or an alien or a monster, whatever it is. I mean, I hate to go back to talking about evil again, but that's what I do on that show. It's like, oh, what do I want to see? What do I want to make? And then I'll design towards that. I'll design towards something that me as a fan would want to see, and and has a story that me as a fan can chart. You can look at putting scars on Godzilla. It's like, okay, well, obviously he's been in fights before. Nothing gets that big, or on King Kong, right? Nothing gets that big without having run into, I mean, we've all got scars, we've all got skin things and whatever it is, it's like those stories, without telling those stories, you can, throw in little sort of breadcrumbs and, then leave it up to the audience to either clue in on that stuff or not. And then if they do, then they can follow it to whatever conclusion they want.
Mm.
But that's, it's those things and tying things to nature and freckles and, age spots and all that kind of stuff that makes things feel believable. So I like when I did, when I redesigned the Hellboy makeup on David Harbour, right? I know a lot of people were, upset that that movie was made and that it wasn't Ron Perlman, whatever. It's like, what are you going to eat, pasta every day? It's like, isn't it nice to try something else? Doesn't mean you can't go back and eat your pasta. Here's something else. Here's a meatball sub, so let's go, try that. Doesn't take away from what came before, but in that character, I wanted to make him feel, a little less like he was in a comic book, a little more like he was in the real world. So I gave him hair, I gave him scars, I gave him age spots and, skin tags. And it was just a different aesthetic, not better, not worse, just different. It's a different way to present that character. I mean, how many different versions of Frankenstein have we seen? How many?
David Harbour's such a great actor.
Yeah, I mean, and I thought he did a great job. I'm happy with the movie, but yeah, I mean, it's stuff like that. It's those little kind of little stories in the skin that I think you were talking about adding. When you're designing.
Yeah, no, I think anatomy and design is. I've rearranged all the chapters for the next edition of the book, and anatomy and design is now chapter 1.
Yeah, great, good.
You just penned stories in the skin, which is a great title for something. I don't know what, but I written it down. That's exactly what
you can have it. That's my gift to you.
Thank you. And now I've got to make something cool using it. That's amazing. I realize the time. We're probably on an hour and 20. You probably waiting 10 minutes for me. So I don't know how's your fire looking? It's starting
it's still good. I might have to throw another log on it, but no, it's still still cooking.
That's a good one.
Roast some marshmallows.
Well, having not seen the latest of your shorts, how much stop motion do you have in that?
There's actually no stop motion in that, which is the one thing that I'm going to add to the next one. That's like the one, I don't, there's no matte painting in it either. But there's miniature, there's rear rod dropped in sort of an environment in the back. And I guess there's a little bit of animation, but it's something he found of some leaves blowing. But it's really all just in the the opening sequence, the part that Rick is in, and then we're inside with the Statler and Waldorf characters playing chess, which sounds boring, but it's not.
Now, had they developed any of the digital animation software yet when you were in school, or have you used any of it?
No, that was 86. I mean, I have Dragon Frame, but I haven't played around with it that much, just because I haven't really had the need. I'm going to start diving into it because of the next short.
So you were doing all hand drawn traditional stuff, and then having to. So you were on an animation board and peg
with the light box and pegboard.
Yeah.
Doing the what do they call it? The where you the test, where the video test.
Yeah.
Thing. Yeah. I would end up doing all my animations like that. I was like, oh, the fucking video test is great. I'll just keep that, why even commit to film? This is perfect.
I don't think a lot of people realize when they watch an animated Disney movie that, everything's animated on ones, getting into a different language here, talking about animated on ones and twos. Disney animated everything on ones. So it's one.
That's an insane amount of
24
work.
frames in a second. So they would have 24 drawings.
24 drawings, yep.
And for every character. So that's why it's so fluid, and why animated movies are rarely longer than 85 or 90 minutes, just because of the
everybody's dead at the end.
Incredible number of drawings you've got to do.
Yeah. And then you watch like the Rankin Bass stuff, like I was watching, Year Without a Santa Claus, and Santa Claus is coming to town, and that's got to be animated on like fives. It's like, how long does it take to jump from here to there?
Yeah.
A quarter of a second.
Wow. I mean, the whole keyframe things with digital stuff makes it so much easier and everything, but that all comes from, like you say, that having to draw that stuff manually. And there's so many cartoons. You look at like the old Tom and Jerry cartoons, there were just thousands of these things.
Oh yeah,
so much work.
Stuff. Well, After Effects was developed as an animation program initially, to basically for doing the paper cutout style animation. We did an animated series for Disney for Lifetime called For Women Driving, but it wound up getting cut because it was too edgy for Lifetime television. But we used After Effects for it, and it was all cutout style stuff that all the files were built in Photoshop, and then they'd send them to us, and we'd animate them all. And After Effects is my favorite software.
That's what we use.
Those ZBrush has kind of edged After Effects out of the way now, but there's virtually nothing you can't do in After Effects.
That's what
Stuart likes it too.
The beginning.
I'm still not as competent as you. I'll still be bugging you with things like, I can do lower thirds and I can make things blur as they disappear. with have you guys seen the Phil Tippett movie? Is it Mad God?
No, I'm dying to see that.
I think I need to see that, because I think that's something that I know I'm going to enjoy it, and I know it's going to have. I hear it's all these different elements.
The trailer is insane,
but that's the beauty.
It's great. It's great.
If you can be in control of something, I guess that's the thing is, as someone that's going to animate it, you've got a story to tell, but also you get to decide the manner in which it's going to be told. You like you say, you may decide on what kind of animation to use, because that is actually part of the story. It's not the only way.
Mad God to me looks like the kind of movie that if Ralph Bakshi had been a stop motion animator, that's the kind of stuff that he would have done.
It's cool because it's very experimental. It's got this sort of experimental feel to it. He's animating live action, like real people. He's animating, certainly the puppets, and the backgrounds are staggering, and he's got, it's loaded with visual effects. It's just a beautiful project all around. And now he's got the book, he's got his book out that I think is just hitting the stands.
I think I might buy that for
Christmas
me for Christmas.
I think that, because there's so many people that will do stuff, on projects, and they're limited to what they've been asked to do on a film, or if you get to sort of control everything, well, you're the god of it all. You get to animate something. It's really interesting to see what happens when the gloves are off and he can do what he wants to do the way he wants to do it. And you must feel that to some degree with your own stuff, like.
Yeah, I mean, it's
broader palette.
Yeah, it's I would love to do something for a mass audience. I would love to take this sort of, because the way I approach these short films, it's very fun horror, right? It's like sort of, it's family horror, it's pure horror. It's not dark, it's not disgusting. It's like the Haunted Palace, it's Vincent Price kind of horror. And I would love to do something for a mass audience using these characters, but with films like Terrifier 2 and this is the exact opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I enjoy seeing, not that I don't enjoy that, but I just don't think that there's a huge market for it. So I sort of gave up trying to get people to invest in it and just figured, what, I'm just going to make it myself. I don't care.
Yeah, there might not be a huge audience, but it might be enough of an audience,
I think it's that enthusiasm and that passion to make it what you want it to be.
Yeah.
That will make it something other people will want to see.
And that's
how my brain rationalizes it.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, because the more sort of heads you get in it, the less it's going to be your vision.
Yeah.
Animation and the short film that it can stay your vision. You can accept the advice and the suggestions of those people that you're collaborating with or not, and you can collectively just make it your own thing. And if everybody's sort of on the same trajectory and on the same path and everybody knows what it's supposed to be, then they know not to what doesn't fit. And you keep the stuff that fits and you reject the stuff that doesn't. But I thought, when I was sending the first Old Time Radio around to the festivals, I thought, wouldn't it be fun if I could take these 2 characters, soon to be 3 characters, and offer them to other filmmakers to utilize these characters, keeping them in, this sort of innocent horror world. I'll
true
do
to their origins.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd make sure that the script was right and what have you, sort of produce the thing from a makeup effects standpoint, lend my characters and just let it be sort of this underground kind of film club of people making films with these guys. Be
interesting to see, to get J.J. Abrams' take on them, and then to get John Landis's take on them, and
exactly.
Michael Bay's take on them.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. I love that.
Wouldn't that be kind of fun? It's like, there's so much work in doing, this last one's 12 minutes long. It's, it's wardrobe, it's props, it's getting the location, getting my DP, getting, him getting his grips and electrics and running a generator and all the stuff that you take for granted as a makeup artist on a film, because somebody else is handling that stuff. When it's up to you to do that, it's like, oh, geez, I forgot about all that. I forgot about this. I forgot about parking situation, vans doing rounders and whatever.
That's a great education.
It really is. It's like, it really, this last one really opened my eyes to how much work really goes into it. So, but still, at the end of the day, it's like, I made it because I wanted to see these 2 guys playing chess. And sure enough, at the end of the day, there they are playing chess, and it's very rewarding for me.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I thought if I sort of lent them out to other filmmakers, it'd be fun to see what they could come up with using these guys, and just let it grow as sort of this underground movement.
It's out there in the atmosphere now.
Yeah, right.
Open source characters kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. That's a great idea. I mean, I think this is really important, because I think any endeavor that is going to take some time to do and will be met with difficulty will be overcome because you have a clear vision of what it is you're trying to do, and that will power you through. That will sustain you when things get tough, because you have, a focus point in the distance to work towards. And I think that's really important to have a clear idea about something.
Now you need to do those makeups again and scan them, so you've got digital assets as well.
Oh, I've already done it.
Oh,
I've
there
already
you go.
Weird.
I should have known.
Yeah, I mean, but you're right. I mean, then, if you wanted to animate them, it's, the like the I can't remember what the show. I think it was Bob's Burgers. Did a show where they had like 20 different animators all doing their different styles with their characters. Like that kind of a thing where they told one story, but everybody brought their own artistic style to drawing the 5 main characters of that series.
Mhm.
And it was really fun to see that.
Yeah, I think South Park guys did a couple of episodes where they had scenes in style of Disney, and then there was some
Like anime and stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like that kind of thing I think is really cool. But yeah, I mean, we've got them as digital assets. So it would be cool to compile, let's just say, in whatever 86-minute feature of shorts made up of, at least it'd be cool for me to see that. But
that sounds like
there's
a
no
great
story.
idea.
I don't know if you could hold people. But I mean, those were always intended as like a wraparound to sort of an EC Warren publication, those kind of morality tale,
Mhm.
Supernatural revenge story kind of thing, and it would be like the binder through all that. It would be the wraparound through all that. You'd come back to these 2 guys, doing whatever they were doing, and the radio would turn on, and it would, you'd go into the radio and come out of sort of any kind of broadcasting device within the context of the story that you find yourself in.
Sounds amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't seen that, so I'll have to check that out, because I mean, I really love that, sort of the Hammer and those anthology stories and all that kind of stuff, and Amicus,
Yeah.
That's it. And it is that charm. It's that it's horror, like you say, but it doesn't need to be. It's not torture porn. It's it's just
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of anthology series.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
the whole family
same.
can enjoy that, which is lovely.
You've got a home base, and all the stories emanate from whatever happens in this, whether it's a donut shop or a travel agency or whatever, and boom.
Yeah.
It's just somewhere to go. And yeah, I mean, the 2 things I'm going to do next, it's another segment of the wraparound, which is those guys, and then a legitimate first episode, which is this story called Pumpkin Boy, that I think I may actually shoot out here in Kentucky, because I've found some pretty amazing locations while I've been here. But that's animatronic puppet, and a whole, I got to get kids that know how to act. That's the hardest thing. I think that's the thing that, like, when I'm watching YouTube and I'm seeing short films or even feature films, the thing, obviously, acting is a big thing, but the thing that lets me know that it's low budget is are the sets. It's the location. Because if I don't know, maybe I accredit working with Gore Verbinski, on the pirate films to really clocking what a background looks like and being able to layer it with surface excitement and things, and it just packing the background full of objects. Because you see a lot of like videos on YouTube and the horror shorts or whatever it is that are just shot in a park. It's like, yeah, okay, well, there's white wall and there's wallpaper and whatever, it doesn't have it doesn't have an atmosphere. You need to create an atmosphere, and that's what that's when I first realized I needed to get a shooting permit, if I was going to film in Glendale, because I found a place that had an atmosphere. It's like, okay, we're going to shoot short here. Came a shooting permit, came, the COVID person, and the whole, it's like, oh, good Lord. It's like a lot of stuff comes with this.
Yeah.
But it's important. It's really important. Otherwise you go, oh, okay, well, this is,
it just adds so much to the production value of what you're doing with, you've got these real tasty environments and locations that looks like you spent a fortune on, but it could take advantage of someone's good graces to let you into their living room that's got exactly the right piano and the fireplace with the stone wall.
Exactly. Exactly. And the place I found was great. I mean, he had curios and, skulls and weird things already there. It was like, okay, great. brought in a couple of things, that I needed to tell a story, but it was already layered, felt rich.
Mm-hmm.
And that coupled with the acting, and I think you can go anywhere with that.
Yeah. And the makeup was pretty good too.
Thanks. Well, if I blew that one, then I might as well turn it in.
Yeah, I think you got that.
I got to get this right. I'll get forgiven for that, but not for this.
Yeah, I did some for stuff for Dave and Lou Elsie. They made some short films, and they made one just during the lockdowns and COVID. And we were talking about the makeup design. Everything was just like, you had me do this makeup for it. It was so much fun because there wasn't that pressure of a a big show with all of the demands of that, and you could really, really get it to town. You can sort of own it and design it utterly and make it just so. And I spent far more time on those molds and the sculpts.
Is that the one with the teeth?
Yeah, I spent way more time on it than I needed to because it was a joy to do. And it's one of those things that I remember Dave saying, if we can't get the makeup right, you know what I mean? It's like, that's a fair point. Because there's so many other things to worry about. But when it all comes together, I guess it's amazing. I don't think I would be good for that kind of thing. I don't know if I could draw pictures and stuff, but I can't think of a whole story out from start to finish. I'm really impressed with people that can, and it's great. And it means other people can, have work. So keep on. I'm really excited to see where we go.
Try. Well, if you've got a small crew, you can run and gun too. You can guerrilla shooting. Permit.
Not
screw that.
Not in Glendale. You can't.
No.
Because I went through this company.
You probably could in Kentucky.
Yes, exactly. And I don't plan on getting any permits here. If I have to fly everybody here and get a permit, it's not good. I saw their film. Was it Keep the Gaslight Burning?
That was great. The
one with Rick in it as the ghost.
That was so much fun.
That was so cool. Yeah, that was very inspirational.
I have not seen that one either.
That one's good.
I saw it on Amazon.
Dave promised. He said he was going to send me a link to it, but I haven't.
There are links. I'll send you the link. He basically put a thing up to the Vimeo. You message him, and then he sends you the password. I think that and Stay Alert.
Cool.
I did is on there, but obviously it's not out for the general public. But you can email him for the password. He put a link up for it, but I'll send that to you.
All right.
That's good fun.
Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll just open this up on Vimeo and let people see it. Yeah,
I think that's great because you can do so much more with a shorter format like that and cram so much in. And I love it when you see things because you kind of get little hints to things that you don't see. You're so used to seeing mainstream movies that when someone really cares about something and makes a short, it really stands out. It kind of gets you in a way that you're not familiar with, and it kind of feels like it's lacking, and it's lovely to see that.
12 minutes is a good length that you can say everything you want to say and leave people wanting more, and you can give them more later on. But I love your idea about getting other filmmakers' takes on your characters.
Well, like you said, we just put it out there, so let's see what happens.
That feels like a good place to wind up. You must be getting cold now. Your toes are getting cold.
I'm actually fine. This thing's
got a good
doing
jacket
its job over here. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Joel, thank you so much. I really appreciate giving you a time like this.
My pleasure. That's been fun.
Yes, it's been a good one for us and did not disappoint. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Good. I'm glad.
Awesome.
Glad I could live up to the wonderful work you guys have done prior.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, that's lovely to hear. Thank you. Yeah, Joel, thank you so much for your time. Really.
My pleasure. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Todd, Stuart, it's been fun.
How cool was that?
Yes, that was great.
That was great. All right, dude. That was an awesome chat. Thanks for arranging that and getting that organized. So childish. That's why you're my friend.
You can get in touch through our Facebook page or email us at stuartandtodd@gmail.com. Check the show notes for more information. If you enjoyed this episode, tell someone else and help us grow by sharing it on social media. Thanks for listening.
Okay, I'll do the makeup.